Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for this committee, both the ranking member and our distinguished chairman, for focusing on this issue. Last month over in the Agriculture Committee, we held a hearing on safeguarding American agriculture in a globalized world. Dr. Inglesby, you really hit the nail on the head with your comments. One of our witnesses was General Richard Myers, a four-star president of Kansas State University, home of the now under construction National Bio and Agri Defense Facility. We call it MBAF for short. You can see why. In his testimony, General Myers notes that because there were two Homeland Security Presidential Directives, HSPDs, in 2004, one that's been some time ago, one for people, one for animals. There does not seem to be as strong of a focus at the executive level on crops and livestock and food. He suggested reasons why this is surprising, and I'll enter his full testimony in the record at this point, if that is all right, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. His reasonings are, one, essentially every country that ever developed an offensive bioweapons program, including the U.S., created weapons targeting agriculture as well as people. I'd just like to insert at this time that we have a lot of interest in this by former Senators Sam Nunn and Dick Lugar, the old Nunn-Lugar program on pandemic threats, and also by Tom Ridge and Joe Lieberman with regards to agri-terrorism. I myself was in charge at one time of the Nunn-Lugar funding as a member of the Armed Services Committee. It was called the Emerging Threats Subcommittee. Went to a place called Obolensky, which is just north and west of Moscow, thereby seeing one of the secret cities. We're not allowed in there now, of course, but we were then because they needed the money. We were focusing on security, but in touring that area, I was a little stunned, not a little stunned, I was really stunned with regards to vast warehouses of pathogens that they were making ready with regards to attacking a country's food supply. We ran an exercise at that particular time. It was called Crimson Sky. It was sort of a misnomer because you don't want to burn carcasses or anything like that, but it was foot and mouth disease. By the time Texas figured out that they would put a stop order from shipping cattle to Oklahoma, or Oklahoma would then to Texas say don't ship any cattle in, and Kansas and Nebraska and North Dakota, South Dakota and North Dakota. We had an epidemic on our hands. We had to terminate thousands, if not millions, of cattle. All of our exports stopped. I mean, all of our exports stopped. There was a run on grocery stores all throughout the country. People finally discovered their food didn't come from grocery stores. It took us years to get back to a situation where we could literally feed not only this country, but a very troubled and hungry world. That was quite an experience for me, and that's when we started on NBAF. The general said, first, as I've indicated, every country ever developed an offensive bioweapons program, also targeted agriculture. Two, almost every pandemic threat today is a zoonotic disease that can spread from animals to people. Among the bioterror threats for which the Department of Homeland Security has issued a material threat determination, all except for smallpox are zoonotic, meaning they reach humans through animals. The foreign animal disease threats could really devastate public health as well, according to General Myers' testimony. Until NBAF is operational in the next 4 to 5 years, I regret that it's taking that long. There is no U.S. laboratory where livestock research can be conducted on Nipah and Ebola, swine being a host animal for both. Mr. Chairman, I would like to work with you and all of our colleagues on this reauthorization to ensure we are addressing and preparing for zoonotic threats. I see I have 25 seconds to ask Dr. Inglesby if he would like to respond. ASPR is responsible for leading the public health emergency medical countermeasure enterprise. This is supposed to be where all the coordinating agencies, Department of Defense, the VA, Agriculture, Homeland Security, along with all the first responders that are involved, along with H2S, to update our strategy and to implement our plan annually. From your perspective, are we doing the job?
I think we have a lot more work to do in the realm of agriculture, food, and crop safety. I completely agree with what you said about the importance of animal vaccines, the shortage or the lack of animal vaccines to protect herds against some of the most serious threats on the planet. I agree with what you said about the threat to agriculture, which I think both animal and plants, I think, have been relatively neglected over the last 15 years. Have we begun to do other things around biological defense? How to organize that in the government, I think, I don't have a strong sense of how that should be organized. I do think that it's complicated in that USDA is responsible for the promotion of food and the business of food, and it's difficult. It perhaps could be difficult to have all of that, the protection of food in the same exact place, but I've seen signs of life in the last 6 months around those programs that I hadn't seen in the last 5 or 10 years. So perhaps the program's becoming much stronger.
Secretary Perdue and the Agriculture Research Service obviously would run NBAF. The construction of it is the Department of Homeland Security. In fact, they are responsible for any attack on the United States. It's been very difficult to focus on this. Some years back on the Intelligence Committee, of which my distinguished friend is the chairman, we were able to determine that what keeps you up at night, that at least in the top 10 was an attack on our food supply. That is not the case today. I'm talking with our CI director, Mike Pompeo, who happens to be from Kansas, and so we're trying to at least reassess that threat, and I think it is a very real one. I thank you all for your service, and I'm over time. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Roberts.